Hi, my name is Chris, aka The Philosopher's Games, or TPH Games as my little games channel here is called, and today I want to talk about the technical state of Jedi Survivor, and in a separate video I also want to talk about the game itself, but this would have gotten far too long. So we focus here on the technical state of the game. The game is out for 1 month, we are 5 patches in, and unfortunately the game still has some issues, which I want to address here. Also, a little spoiler warning, there won't be any story spoilers, but we talk maybe about some game mechanics and maybe also some bugs I encountered later into the game. So if you haven't played the game yet, keep this in mind. I will maybe show you some places or even game mechanics and maybe some enemies, but as said, I avoid story spoilers. For footage at times I will also use my Twitch stream footage, so the image quality might vary here and there. Jedi Survivor is in a tough spot, and this is almost the too long didn't watch version of this video here. It does a lot of things incredibly well, and it is at its core an incredible game. It also improves a lot of things compared to its predecessor, Jedi Fallen Order. But it also has some issues here and there, though some of them you can avoid or are potential in some optional areas of the game. On the other hand, it also has massive technical issues, and that is, I think, the biggest problem of the game, and also something I really want to discuss here at the beginning. You have heard it a lot, and I made also a video to help some people out with technical issues here on this channel, and all the patches don't solve all the problems the game have, and there are problems in the game beyond just technical issues. In this example clip here, a Rancor grabs me, and if I dodge at a certain frame and he grabs me at a certain frame, it seems that the animation is not aligning correctly and my character is just flying through the air. I mean, that's a funny little bug, but it just shows how well it fits to the environment of a lot of issues in this game, and that the game simply needed more time in the oven, I think you call it in English. The game simply needed more time, and that is very unfortunate because at its core it's a great game, but the technical issues hold it back. If you now add to performance issues, which are already very annoying, and stutters and so on, and all these minor little bugs that also appear in the game and can be also annoying, don't get me wrong, on top of that game crashes, then this is a recipe for frustration and a very bad player experience. And it's so unfortunate, it's such a great game, but it's held back by that, and it's hard to recommend even with patch 5 currently. Because with the current patch in the game, I personally encountered, and this is anecdotal, also several game crashes, more than on the previous patch, and that is unfortunate. And this is amplified by a very weird game design decision. The game only saves at meditation points. There's no other way to save than going to a meditation point, sitting down, and then the game saves. It's the only way you can save. There might be in some areas autosaves as well, but they're not as widespread as you would think. And it's kind of interesting if you consider that even though I wouldn't say it's a pure Souls-like game, Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor both are definitely heavily inspired by FromSoft's Souls games. And in those Souls games, there is a difference when it comes to saving. Those games save all the time. So if you, I don't know, walk 10 meters and quit out of the game has most likely saved where you quit out, and also if it would have crashed at this point, you maybe only lose like 10 seconds of playtime. In Jedi Survivor, that is not the case. It only saves at a meditation point. So if you leave the meditation point and play for half an hour without resting at another one, and the game crashes or you quit out, everything you have done is gone. And you have to do it again. You can imagine how fun that is. And it also happened to me, and I was not a fan of that. Interestingly, the game is able to make autosaves at certain points, it seems, because in some story missions, when I died due to my sheer incompetence, I was not respawning at the last meditation point / bonfire, but somewhere in between at a checkpoint, because it was there, and I appreciated that. But it also shows it is technically possible to save outside of meditation points in the game. And why would they not be able to save the game whenever they want? That's a ridiculous assumption. A lot of games allow you to freely save. That's a very basic core feature. And Of course, the developers are able to implement this into the game. It's not a technical limitation in any shape or form. However, you can make the argument that if you would allow a game to save every 10 seconds automatically, like Elden Ring or the Dark Souls games, then you have to handle and cover a lot of edge cases, so you don't generate a save file where there is an endless death loop or a soft lock for the player, like he respawns at a position where he can't move out again and so on when he falls down or something like this. Stuff like this has to be avoided. However, there is a mechanic like this already in Jedi Survivor, and it was also in Jedi Fallen Order. When you jump down a cliff into the abyss and your character would, I guess, die, he doesn't die, he just teleports back on top of the cliff and you lose a little bit of health. And the loss of health you can also deactivate in the accessibility options menu when you deactivate fall damage there. So the game has a mechanism already implemented that handles some of these edge cases. So the game, to handle this, has to save the last position of your character where the character model was able to stand on the ground safely without being in a fall state. And this the game already handles. So this even reduces further the argument that it would not be able to implement an autosave all the time. And if that is not a technical limitation or whatever, then you definitely ask yourself the question, wait, when this is possible, why didn't they do this? If they knew their game was in a terrible technical state and had crashes and performance issues and all of that, and in my opinion, Respawn and potentially EA definitely knew about the state of the game and that it had issues. Like, it's, for me personally, unthinkable that QA did not figure this out. Usually it's like QA figures stuff out and then the developers run out of time till release to fix all the issues. And I think that is a problem here as well. They knew of all the problems, but they had not the time to fix them yet. In this context then, you ask yourself the question, why doesn't the game autosave all the time then when they knew that the game could crash for quite a few of people? I assume maybe they underestimated the crashing issue quite a bit. And on the other point, maybe sometimes developers are stubborn and want to stick to their original vision. I don't have a good explanation for this, and you probably have to ask them yourselves, but this is, in my opinion, one of the greatest flaws. And what is even weirder is, if I remember correctly, Fallen Order did actually save whenever you collected a collectible item. So you would respawn at the meditation point, but the collectible item would be in your pocket. This is not the case here. If you find an item and it's put into your inventory, and even if you just quit out of the game normally, it's not saved. It's gone and you have to collect it again. If the game crashes, the same. And that is, in my opinion, a very stupid design decision, especially when you consider that the game runs so badly in so many systems and has crashing issues. Like, it would be a no-brainer, in my opinion, to just be more generous with autosaves in the game than just to avoid frustration for the players. You can, if you don't want to have it like in Dark Souls where the game is saved every 10 seconds, then maybe let the game save every time you collect an item, every time you defeat an enemy and are out of combat again. Stuff like that would tremendously help. Even if you respawn at the meditation point, at least you have the experience you collected and you have the items you collect, and that would be already, I guess, okay with a lot of people, and maybe the shortcuts unlocked. I would really like to know why the developers decided against this, but I guess we will never know. So most people would agree that if a game suffers from crashes and on top of that also has some minor, potentially annoying bugs here and there that can potentially kill the game's immersion, that this is not great and is rightfully criticized. However, what is the big deal with the performance issues here? Wouldn't it be enough if the game would just run at, let's say, 30 FPS? And here it comes down to several aspects, in my opinion. We have the standards of the industry, we have the expectations of the player base, and we have consistency. And those don't align very well in the case of the release of Jedi Survivor. If we look at, for example, The Legend of Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, we see that it runs at 30 FPS, but it runs at 30 FPS on a Nintendo Switch, on a handheld basically. And if Jedi Survivor would run on the Nintendo Switch with consistent 30 FPS, I would be very impressed by that, because that is kind of the standard for that platform. Also, the previous game, Breath of the Wild, which also looked quite similar by its graphic style and graphic fidelity, also ran at 30 FPS there, and both ran at least very consistent. So that aligns well with the standard for the platform, with the expectations of the players, and it's also consistent. With Jedi Survivor, that is not the case, because here it clearly goes against the standards of the industry, that they bring a game out and a high-end gaming PC can't run it at a consistent frame rate. That is kind of unusual if you compare this to a lot of other games. And at the same time, the game doesn't look like 3 generations ahead. It just looks pretty decent and good, but it doesn't look that good. On top of that, player expectations. We know other games that are open world and have beautiful graphics, and they run much better. Kind of strange. And last, we have consistency. We look at the options menu and say, well, if it doesn't run at 60 FPS and have problems, maybe I should lower the graphics settings. And then you do this and notice, wait, this does nothing. It doesn't matter if I run the game at 1440p or at 720p on everything on low, it still has the same frame rate issues I had before. That is simply a problem, and that is why people complain about this quite a bit. In its current state, though, this got a lot better, but still, it is, in my opinion, a problem. And, of course, the biggest issue, in my opinion, is definitely that the game has crashes for a lot of people, and this can be very frustrating. And you also notice that a lot of the patches in the game are purely focused on performance and increasing that. So many patch notes about performance, and so little about fixing some game-breaking bugs, though. To be fair, they also fixed some little bugs here and there. That's definitely true. For example, in the release version, if you got killed by a certain enemy called Mogu in the game, and he used his grab attack on you, at least that was the case for me, my experience points would not be on him, so I couldn't retrieve them, and they would also be not on the ground. It seems like they were shown on the map, but maybe they were now below the surface of the terrain, and I couldn't retrieve them anymore. This way, I, by the way, lost about 3 skill points in the game. You can imagine how happy I was when that happened. But at least they fixed the bug in one of the recent patches. So in the current version, it definitely does not happen anymore. So I would recommend updating to that, because it's very frustrating losing skill points to a stupid bug like that. However, I also found other bugs even in the current version. For example, one time I was in combat and couldn't use my Jedi Mind Confusion ability, which I also invested a lot of skill points into, anymore in combat. It's interestingly on the same button as calling an animal to ride on. And in this case, usually the game differentiates what I want to do depending an enemy marked in combat or if I'm just running around freely. In this case, the differentiation didn't work anymore. It was just always calling the animal, and that was, as you can imagine, annoying. To fix this, I had to quit the game back to the title menu. And what this means is, in this game, because you can't just press quick save, quick load here, you have to get out of combat, return to the meditation point, and then quit out of the game into the title menu, load back into the game, and go back where you just were and continue there. As you can imagine, that was annoying. Another bug I encountered was that I had to interact with the device by shooting a certain ability at it. And the hitbox was too small, so I shot my ability. I even got the indicator that I interacted with it, but it didn't hit fully, and I didn't see this. So I thought I already hit this device once before, maybe it doesn't work a second time and it's a different solution. So I looked for quite some time for a second solution, but could find any. And this was very frustrating until I tried this basically again, and suddenly it worked. And I went into the footage of the VOD of my stream and looked at the scene again, and I hit it. I even get the indicator that I should have hit this thing, but if you look very carefully, you notice that I hit a little bit low and that potentially the hitbox of the object is too small, which is the reason why the interaction didn't work, and I simply did not expect that this could be the case. So I wasted quite a bit of time finding something that wasn't even there. Then they introduced another strange bug with patch 5 on the PC version, and that is if you go into the options menu and want to change your resolution, it seems to not work anymore. If the accept this resolution, save this resolution window appears, then if you press enter or press A or X on your controller, it doesn't do anything anymore. What you have to do, and I had to literally Google it to find it out, and somebody on Reddit posted it, that you now have to click on accept. Otherwise, it doesn't work, even though it shows on the button press accept or press enter. Stuff like this is just, unfortunately, very annoying. Like, this would not happen in, for example, the new Zelda game, which, as said, is just very impressive. It didn't crash in 20 hours, and you can save whenever you want. That also helps quite a bit. But on top of that, it's a game with a lot of physics interactions and so much freedom. You can do so many things there and just try whatever you want, it feels. And the game always works. Like, there might also be some edge case scenarios where you can maybe generate a wonky interaction here and there for sure, but most of the time the game just runs very well, and that is insanely impressive. And it shows that when we're talking about industry standards, that in this AAA segment where we are now with Jedi Survivor, a game that had a huge budget for sure, just getting the Star Wars license was for sure expensive, but here we see definitely that they don't hit these standards. Resident Evil 4 Remake also had some crashing issues when your VRAM was running full, but you can fix this quite easily by just slightly lowering your texture resolution. So that was also unfortunate, but beyond that, the game ran very consistent and well for me, and I had a blast, and there weren't that many bugs I encountered there as well. So there are these AAA games that actually come out and work well, even on PC. And it's just so unfortunate that this is not the case for Jedi Survivor, and it seems they should have delayed the game by several months. We are now 1 month in, and the game is still not fixed completely. Like, we are at patch 5, and they mostly just fixed performance issues and very few gaming issues. It just shows that this game definitely would have needed much more time in development before they should have released it. And that definitely will leave a sour taste for a lot of people when they think back of Jedi Survivor, I think. Especially the game crashes is something that should definitely be fixed, and is, in my opinion, an absolute no-go on a game, especially if you lose progress every time. There's an interesting interview with Eiji Aonuma, the creator of Tears of the Kingdom, who said in this interview, and I will link it down in the description, that the game was potentially, if you read a bit between the lines, done in March 2022, but it wasn't polished enough yet. So they decided to delay the game for over a year and just to work on it and polish the game to make it the best possible experience. And I applaud Nintendo for this decision, and it really shows in the technical state the game came out, how well it runs, even though it's such a complex game mechanically and has so many pitfalls for potential bugs and weird interactions, and they just don't appear, and the game also is not crashing. So you definitely see that this work was put in there and led to a great result. And it is great to see that some companies, and even though Nintendo is a company that also does some strange things, and they have to be criticized for some stuff they do as well, but at least when it comes to their software quality of first-party titles that are developed in company, they definitely have standards, and it seems like EA has far lesser standards, which I guess won't surprise anyone. But in the current state, Jedi Fallen Order can't be recommended, at least by my side. You still should wait a few more patches, and I said this when I made my first video, and I have to repeat it again. It's unfortunately not done. So if you don't have endless desire to play the game right now and can wait a little bit longer, then I would definitely recommend waiting, and potentially you are lucky and also get a good discount on the game. Here, in this particular case, patient gamers are definitely in an advantage, and that is basically my final verdict for now on the technical state. I would also love to discuss like the gameplay of the game, maybe a bit the story, but if I do, I potentially do this in a separate video, because we're already at the 20-minute mark here, and I don't want to make this video too big. So if you're interested in this, I maybe link it then in the description later if it ever exists, or check my channel, press maybe the subscribe button to get notified, or if you're still listening, please feel free to leave a comment and tell me how your experience with the game was, and maybe press the like button. I would say thank you people for watching. See you next time. Goodbye.